Welcome to the Rainmaker Podcast with your host, Guy Costin. The goal of this podcast is to give listeners a unique look into sales strategies from top industry executives. We introduce you to the heads of sales and heads of distribution who will help you understand the inner workings of the successful sales organizations from philosophy to execution. This podcast is essential for sales professionals seeking wisdom from the best in the field. If you're not familiar with Dakota and their Dakota Rainmaker content, please check out dakota.com to learn more about their services.
This episode is brought to you by Dakota Marketplace. Are you tired of constantly jumping between multiple databases and channels to find the right investment opportunities? Introducing Dakota Marketplace, the comprehensive institutional and intermediate database built by fundraisers for fundraisers. With Dakota Marketplace, you'll have access to all channels and asset classes in one place, saving you time and streamlining your fundraising process. Say goodbye to the frustration of searching through multiple databases, websites, Form ADVs, and say hello to a seamless and efficient fundraising experience. Sign up now and see the difference Dakota Marketplace can make for you. Visit dakota.com/Dakota-Marketplace today.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Rainmaker Podcast. You're joined today not by Guy Costin, but I'm subbing in here. For those of you who are not familiar with my voice, Pat Tighe, the head of product at Dakota. I also host two of our other podcasts, the Dakota Fundraising News Podcast, weekly on Wednesday and Friday with Conch. And then I host the Dakota Research Podcast with Chris Leroy, our Director of Investment Research. Today on Rainmaker, I'm honored to be here and joined by DeWayne Louis, founding partner of Versor Investments. DeWayne, thanks for coming and joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. DeWayne Louis joined Versor Investments as a founding partner and is based in New York. DeWayne has over 20 years of experience in quantitative investment strategies, investment banking, private equity, and hedge funds. Prior to Versor Investments, DeWayne joined Investcorp's hedge fund group at the inception of the North America and Europe branches. He remained there for nearly a decade. Prior to Investcorp, DeWayne was an associate director in UBS's private equity secondary group, focusing on buying and selling private equity interests in the secondary market. Earlier in his career, he was an associate in the investment banking division of Credit Suisse, where he focused on mergers, acquisitions, and project finance transactions. DeWayne serves on the board of the New York City Economic Development Corporation, which is the city's primary vehicle for promoting economic growth in each of the 5 boroughs. DeWayne also serves on the board of the Brooklyn Public Library, one of the nation's largest public library systems. BPL is a recognized leader in cultural offerings, literacy, and out-of-school time services, workforce development programs, and digital literacy. DeWayne holds a bachelor's in finance and international business with a French minor from Georgetown University. There, he was a 4-year varsity letterman on the football team. So today's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to talk a lot about sales best practices. You all implement a ton of AI across your business. We're really excited to hear about that. But first, just for the audience, we'd love to hear a little bit more about you. You know, just where you're from, college. I saw that you played football in college. We'd love to just talk a little bit about your personal background before we dive into the nitty gritty.
Happy to do that. No, thanks for that. No, thanks for having me here.
Of course.
DeWayne Louis grew up in Chicago, actually a town right outside Chicago, Evanston, Illinois. I'm always very careful in case people from Chicago listen to this. I always have to say I'm from Evanston because Chicago folks don't like claiming that you're from Chicago if you're not there. Parents from the Caribbean, so first generation American. My mom is from Jamaica. My dad was from Haiti. Fortunate enough to be pretty decent student, pretty good athlete. Ended up playing football at Georgetown University. So I always get joked. Another thing I get joked on is whether or not Georgetown has a football team. So yes, we do. It's 1AA, playing the Patriot League. Spent 4 years playing for that squad and enjoyed it. I think a big part of how I progressed as a professional really relates back to athletics and academics. One thing I'm always biased towards folks that come from an athletic background. One of the things that athletics treats you, particularly at a collegiate level, is how to overcome adversity. So on football, you're watching game film on Monday. No matter win a loss or draw, whatever the case may be, you would have made a mistake. And you're going to have to see yourself overcoming that mistake and watching the mistake in front of your peers and learning from that. So I take that away. I think about that a lot.
Yeah, I love it. Especially this podcast, we talk a lot about sales, and I think especially sports is interesting when it comes to sales because you're always sort of seeking more and more. You're never sort of really satisfied, right? With sports, you win a game, you still have to go win another game, right? It's not like immediately over, or you lose, right? You still have to suit up and play in the next game. So
exactly right.
It's a powerful way to train yourself for sales, but really for careers in general.
Yeah, indeed.
Well, cool. Tell us a little bit about Versor Investments for anyone who's not familiar, just your background before starting the firm with your colleagues and the whole overview.
Yeah. I tell people, I think that I'm a person that likes change. I've been married for almost 17 years. I met my wife in the year 2000. We've lived in the same house for the last 17 years.
Wow.
And I've been working with my partners for the last 2 decades. So prior to Versor, a group of us worked together at Investcorp. So 4 of the 5 founding partners worked together at Investcorp. At this point, we've been working together for 20 years. About 11 years ago, we decided to leave Investcorp and start what we're doing now at Versor Investments. So at Investcorp, we invested across the entire ecosystem of hedge funds. So we had a fund-of-fund business, a managed account business, an internal trading business. But a big part of what fueled the infrastructure, the research for what we're doing at Investcorp was this quantitative research initiative to help us better understand the drivers of hedge fund returns. We effectively took that research that we were doing at Investcorp and created a business out of it. So today, Versor Investments is a quantitative investment boutique focused on the entire ecosystem of equities. So we'll trade single name stocks in a market neutral fashion, a quantitative market neutral fashion. We'll trade equities undergoing corporate events, merger arbitrage, spin-offs, and other events. Again, quantitatively, leveraging a large proprietary data set. And then we trade equity index futures. One unique aspect of how we evaluate equity index futures is we tend to evaluate from the perspective on the underlying constituents. So look at the 500 stocks and S&P 500. They develop a view on the index based on underlying constituents and trade that across markets. We manage about $1.5 billion on behalf of a global group of clients. So most of our clients would resemble pension plans and the advisors that look after that demographic of investor. A growing part of our business today is focused on the wealth management channel. So we'll talk about a little bit how we think about that. That continues to grow. We're just finished our first decade. We're looking forward to the second and third decades. We'll see how that goes.
Yeah. The demand for private markets and alternatives from the retail channel obviously has been out of control. How's that process been for you all? Just sort of swimming downstream a bit from the institutions to more of a retail investor?
So it's quite frankly, it's been a learning curve for us. Our entire background over the last couple of decades has focused on the institutional channel. One of the things that we launched a few years ago was a product that takes more long bias exposure towards U.S. equity markets and seeks some alpha opportunities externally. Historically, what we found was for our institutional clients, most of them want market neutral diversifying portfolios, or diversifying exposures. We launched this more long bias product that we think does a good job of capturing market beta and then protecting on the downside. It's really kind of out of that product that we started talking to more wealth management channels. One of the things that we have encountered as we talk to that demographic of investor is thinking about the appropriate delivery mechanism. So a offshore Cayman fund is not appropriate perhaps for a registered investment advisor, wealth management channel. We have been exploring in the process of launching kind of a mutual fund and more daily liquid vehicle to help that track that demographic client. In terms of how we reach out to the underlying investor base, that's where I should give you guys a shout out using like platforms like Dakota. One of the things I've watched a couple of these podcasts, and one of the things that your colleague Guy talks about is this idea of cold outreach. I think your platform serves as a good jumping board for cold outreach. Cold outreach, I would say, is helpful in the institutional channel, but having done this a long time, we know a lot of the folks in that space. In the wealth management channel, where the numbers are not hundreds of potential investors, but tens of thousands of potential investors, having a platform like yours, and we use that pretty extensively, helps quite a bit.
Well, I love it. As leading the product team, I'm obviously happy to hear that. Was going to ask you for some feedback after the recording today on the products. If you have any critical feedback, we're open to that too. We're always trying to improve. Well, good. So calling on seemingly all different distribution channels. Obviously, I was reading over the notes. You all have a pretty lean team. Could you just talk to us about how the team on the distribution side is structured? Where are people spending their time and focusing? And I know you all use a number of tools for efficiency. We'd love to just hear your perspective.
So we do have a pretty lean team that we leverage extensively. And the use of leverage is through the use of technology, particularly people use the term AI pretty loosely, but let's call them AI automation type tools. So the team itself is comprised of 5 individuals. There are 2 senior salespeople, myself who covers most of North America and some of Europe, and I also have a colleague who sits in Mumbai, India. I'll talk about a construct of our broader team. We have a large office in India. One of my partners sits in India, and it covers kind of Asia, parts of Europe, and more emerging markets. Supporting that team are two senior professionals that look after the infrastructure of what we do. So the infrastructure will involve kind of the branding infrastructure. How do we go about voicing who we are in the marketplace? It'll involve the technology that we use. So the AI tools, we use a lot of automation tools as it relates to engagement with clients. Whether it's a CRM tool or email automation, we use AI tools as it relates to how we communicate with clients. So something as simple as filling out a DDQ, large part of that can be automated, and we do use tools to automate that. The answers should be consistent across applications, across filling out the DDQs. And we use AI tools to help us with project management. I can give some examples of that.
Yeah.
But the use of these AI tools allows a team that's somewhat lean, 5 people, to really complete the task. I think of a team that perhaps maybe is 3 times as large. Supporting the 2 senior salespeople and the 2 infrastructure folks is an office manager who she's kind of, you can think of her as being our chief of staff, who kind of manages the entirety of all the things I mentioned.
Yeah. So that's a little bit on the distribution and sales side. How about the rest of the team? You alluded to, an office in India, but just how big is the firm? How about the rest of the team?
We have about 59 people in total.
Nice.
One of the things, so about 40 people on the research side, and the balance kind of doing things like I do and some operation admin work. One of the things, if you looked at the folks that work for Versor, and I told you nothing about how we actually generate revenues, it will resemble a team that we would find at a tech company.
Yeah.
So effectively what we do is write software. We happen to use our software to trade financial markets. So most of the men and women who work at Versor come from quantitative technology type backgrounds. So we have a large team of data scientists that typically have PhDs or masters in things like physics, computer science, astrophysics. We really look for men and women who are able to take their academic pursuits, whatever they pursued in academia or in their professional life, whether it's observing the interaction of stars, as it were, and apply that to financial markets. The idea is like using large, robust, unstructured data sets and translating that in mechanisms that can help us generate what we think are good returns.
Nice. Yeah. You hiring? If we have any PhDs listening in?
We are always hiring.
Nice. We all heard it here first. Rocket scientists looking for a pivot.
There you go.
Well, great. So you're in an interesting spot as having been a co-founder of the firm, but seemingly we were just chatting, you had some meetings today. So in a contributory sales role, but also in a leadership role, can you just talk to us a little bit about how the team communicates with you and just sort of how the structure works there?
I would say all of the partners of the firm are charged with revenue generation. And in a firm that's primary business is investing in financial instruments, there's 2 primary ways of generating revenue. One is on hopefully you have some assets and you can generate positive returns on that assets. The other aspect is growing the firm, actually raising assets. I think philosophically, we view those 2 roles as equal across the firm. And the expectation across all of the partners around the firm is that one must contribute towards both. My particular expertise is not necessarily on the investment management function, but I do spend a role in articulating the challenges clients might be facing and how we might address those challenges through our research and what we might focus on in making our products better. Similarly, all the partners across the firm are firm believers in our ability to serve our clients well and play a very active role in that. I take the lead in that effort, but in terms of how we interact with the team is with that philosophy in place, that we want to work with our client partners in a thoughtful way, not just in gathering assets, which is important, and retaining assets, which is important to us, but also making sure those assets we act as good stewards of those assets and ensure that they perform as expected.
Yeah, I love it. How about from an accountability perspective with the team? So for us, just as an example, we have every single morning a 7:45 a.m. check-in where our sales team literally reads through the entire calendar of the day. So here's every call we have today and who is it with. Yeah. It sounds a little micromanagey at first, but when you think about it, it actually serves as this really great tool for collaboration. If a junior BDR on our software sales team schedules a meeting and they say, hey, that meeting's at 2:00, they scheduled it with John Smith, and then you have myself, Guy, Rob, the rest of our team are listening in saying, oh wow, we knew John Smith from his time at Blackstone, be sure to reference that, or hey, Guy used to work with this guy at XYZ firm. Just that level of communication constantly happening. Anything on that note that you would just add?
Yeah, so the way that we think about things, we do work under kind of these OKR, so objectives and key results type mechanism, where everyone on the team, particularly on the sales, distribution, and marketing team, sets their OKRs. We pay particular focus on A+ projects. So A+ projects are meant to be big initiatives that are likely to lead to success across the firm. And success is kind of client acquisition and kind of retaining our client assets and hopefully generating positive results. There are, I wouldn't say we do daily check-ins, but there are periodic check-ins, weekly check-ins on the A+ projects. In terms of the day-to-day blocking and tackling, particularly around marketing sales, we do have daily check-ins. The daily check-ins are not governed by kind of what one might be thinking about at the moment or kind of, I had this question, I'm bringing it up, but really daily check-ins are governed by a tool that we use called Motion AI. So Motion AI is a project management tool where we set projects, whatever the projects might be, and we assign responsibilities to those projects. So similar to the daily calls that you might have, or the daily check-ins that I might have, all of that can be automated. So I know that there are 4 or 5 projects that I'm working on in conjunction with my teammates. They're assigned responsibilities. I can see that in Motion AI tool. And to an extent, it's almost an automation of the alerting that there's an issue going on. And then it really hones my focus on those issues. It's quite helpful, quite frankly, I'm a player coach, so I'm on the road. I'm doing a role that a lot of my team is doing in terms of engaging with clients. May not, if I'm on the plane, I just came back from the West Coast last night. If I'm on the plane, I'm not paying attention necessarily to everything, every project, every team member is working on. When I land, I can see that there might be some challenges, might be an area of focus. Maybe I missed something. I can see that automatically pop up on my phone as something to pay attention to immediately.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, my next question here was any tips and tricks for other, distribution leaders who are looking to, capture feedback from their teams. It sounds like a lot of technologies is sort of automating that for you.
This might be controversial. But
Let's do it.
I firmly believe that to the extent one is not using, integrating thoughtful automation AI tools, particularly as it relates to sales and distribution, it's going to be very challenging going forward. And being able to learn and adapt from those tools. Because there was a time not too long ago where you might have hired a person, maybe several people, to help manage client calendars. Maybe it was a person that was a project manager that was designed to be a facilitator across team members. There are AI tools that can do that. And one can debate as to whether or not they do it as good as a human being, but there are AI tools that can do that. To the extent one is not engaging with those AI tools in a meaningful way, not only I think it potentially does your firm a disservice, I think it doesn't completely capture the potential of who you can be as an organization.
I love it. Then, I mean, the next thing we would like to talk about is CRM, right? So CRM is obviously super important. We are nuts when it comes to Salesforce as our CRM. If it's not in Salesforce, it didn't happen. Really, every single meeting that you have, every single piece of notes that you have, and you hear salespeople say all the time, like, "Hey, I was hired to do sales, not to update a CRM." But the real powerful salesperson is one who knows the meaning in leveraging the CRM for follow-up or, being able to reference something. I mean, I was reading through some notes in our CRM recently, and one of our sales guys added like XYZ prospect, and then in the notes it was like just went on an Appalachian Trail road trip with his family. It's like, well, that's not really pertinent to the deal we're trying to raise from them, but it is, because 2 months from now when we go to have that call with that prospect, we say, hey, how was Northern Virginia or wherever they were. So anything you would add just about the power of leveraging your CRM?
I agree with everything you just said. So if it's not in Salesforce, it didn't happen. It's not in the conversation that we should even engage in, because it hasn't been. We haven't captured data. The only thing that I would add, and this tying this back to the use of AI. So every call these days is, not every call, but most calls these days are done through some video platform, whether it's Teams or Zoom or whatever platform any particular firm is using. One of the things that we do and become heavily users of is being able to record those transcripts. So maybe not recording a call in perpetuity, but to the extent your compliance team allows you and the client with whom you're engaging allows you to record these conversations, we do that. And we don't necessarily capture the entirety of the transcript, but we capture a summary of those notes. And to the point, that you're mentioning is important to capture not just details about the conversation that we're having, but it's important to capture details about personal lives. So now we can do that in an automated way, just going back to how we leverage a small team. In days gone by, the person who you mentioned who wrote that sales note and assumed that he wrote that in a, maybe he's a little bit more advanced and he did it on his iPad where he can just upload it immediately to Salesforce. Increasingly, I see people writing on it with a piece of paper. Now you got to translate that piece of paper into a note. They got to spell check it, you got to proofread it. Then you got to enter into the CRM. That might take 15, 30 minutes. I think using automation tools, you can do that in 3 or 5.
Yeah.
It just allows you to then approach the next client in a more meaningful way, in a more thoughtful way.
Yeah, we actually coded something into Slack where you can go into Slack and there's a channel that we have called meeting notes, and you can do a / type in who you spoke with, and it's a quick click from your phone.
Yeah.
Type in the notes like you're sending a text, click send, it sends to Salesforce and to Slack.
Yeah.
It's been super powerful because you leave a meeting and you're like, wow, that was super important, but I'm in Boston and now I have to get from the Pru to one international place. I have to jump in an Uber. I don't have time to pull out a notebook. I don't have time to pull out my iPad. I can just text the notes to myself in the elevator. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah.
For recordings, what do you all use, if you don't mind me asking? We use Gong internally as an AI recording software.
We use the Teams software. So Teams has like a recording element. I think it's actually, I don't know if it's native to Teams or as an add-on, but it's within the Teams platform, Microsoft Teams.
Nice. Yeah, it's been super powerful for us because, again, you're on a call. You want to be giving this person your attention, not constantly looking away to scribble down notes.
So we meet with a lot of public pension plans.
Yep.
And a lot of public pension plans will have their meetings are recorded, right? And either there's an audio recording, there's a video recording, sometimes it's both. It's definitely a transcript. It's definitely meeting notes. What we've done now, ahead of every meeting, I mentioned I came in here from California. I was meeting with the board of one of the public pension plans in California. Ahead of that meeting, I can ask the large language model to summarize the contents of the last, call it 3 years worth of meetings. And then from that summary, so there's a summary report, whatever platform one might use, a ChatGPT, any other AI bot. Then from that report, I can just engage with that chatbot around, these are things I think are important. These are things I would focus on. How have they addressed these things in the past? So similarly, as I was preparing for this conversation, I literally asked the chatbot, these are the Dakota podcasts over the last, you've been doing this 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
What are the things that people focused on? What are the questions that have been asked? What are the things that we do, Versor Investments, that can add value to that conversation? I think that the use of AI and how you can incorporate that into either preparing for a podcast and preparing for a board presentation, engaging with clients, is immensely useful.
Yeah.
And it's something that we all should do. I know I'm just going into this AI thing quite a bit. My point, what I'm trying to address, it's likely that a lot of folks that listen to this podcast, I know this because I did the analytics around this podcast, are mid-sized or smaller size firms who are saying maybe it's 2 or 3 people who are going out engaging with folks, and they're thinking about, if I want to achieve some level of success, I need to compete against the large multi-billion-dollar, tens of billion-dollar platform who have a tremendous amount of resources. Historically, that's been really hard. So that historically, if you're trying to compete against a large asset manager with a team force, like a sales force of 30 people, you just have to figure that out and be scrappy. I think there's a way today that allows some bit of equalization between kind of the guy, man and woman that was just starting up their shop and competing against the large multi-billion-dollar managers through the use of technology.
Yeah. Well, I love it. Couldn't agree more. Maybe a really good point into sort of our next question. You mentioned in your opening comments, you've been with your partners now for 17 years. You all founded the firm. You all, $1.5 billion under management. You all have obviously been very successful. Sort of what is your sort of team's leadership approach in general, separate from sales, just as we think about, growing a business really in the entrepreneurial spirit?
I think philosophically, we view everyone on the team as being an entrepreneur in and of himself. So we are big believers in hiring what we think are very smart, capable men and women to work at Versor, and entrusting those men and women to deliver on the objectives. So I talked about kind of how we lay out objectives, how we lay out A+ for our priorities. We agree that these are things that are important, and then we trust folks to execute. And I think that's easier said than done. What enables us to trust is kind of, we're very thoughtful around how we go about mentoring and providing the infrastructure and assistance to ensure that level of success. But we're big believers around not micromanaging, allowing people to explore and develop and generate an outcome that we think will be beneficial to the firm and themselves, quite frankly.
Yeah, we have a handful of what most people would call core principles. We call them Dakota-isms. One that I love is focus on what matters most. So those are sort of the A+ projects, if you will. How does your team and what does that team look like that actually identifies like, hey, this is an A+ project, this is an A project, this is a C- project, or if you do it that way, if you don't. But how do you go about deciding, what is an A+ project?
Yeah. So we have a weekly partners meeting. So in addition to the 5 founding partners, there are probably 7 or 8 men and women across the firm that are also designated partners. Each partner looks after a certain group within the firm. It's that group that decides on the A+ project. And the A+ project, again, for us is defining things, not that I'm going to make 10 calls in the next week, but that I want to launch a mutual fund. And I think the mutual fund is going to be strategically impactful for our firm because it allows us to engage with the wealth management channel with a vehicle that we think is more efficiently accessible to that demographic client. From that A+ project. So that's defined. So all of us as a firm will agree that this is important. This is something strategically important to the firm. Then is around execution around that. That's charged with me. I decided this is an A+ project. I need to decide how to project manage that particular A+ initiative and what are the resources I need. The debate then is around how do we delegate resources because it requires cross collaboration. That's a part of that weekly team meeting that I described. And each one of us will do the exact same thing, describing what the A+ project is. All of us collectively agree. Then how do we go about assigning responsibility and delegating to achieve that A+ objective?
Yeah. How many of these A+ objectives do you think that you have in a given, week, month, year?
Yeah. So in a year, you probably shouldn't have more than 1 or 2 A+ objectives.
Got it.
All right. So A+ objectives are, again, not the day-to-day blocking and tackling, which we do and that's taken care of. But the A+ objective is something meaningful to bring the firm forward.
I love it. We call them rocks. And it's like, here's your quarterly rock. That's the North Star, right?
Yeah.
Whatever you do, every piece of blocking and tackling you're doing should be with the goal of going towards this, quarterly rock.
That's exactly right. So that's the same way that we think about it. You can think about in the software world, you can think about going from the version 3.1 to version 3.2.
Yep.
We're thinking about what's the objective, what's the project going to lead us from version 3 to version 4.
Yeah.
Complete reintroduction of who we are.
Yeah, I love it. You have to hit 1 and 2 on the way.
You have to hit 1, 2, 3, and all whatever it takes. How many steps it takes on the way, but you want to get to version 4.
Yeah. I love it. Well, DeWayne, you've obviously had an illustrious career that spanned, finance across the board. What advice would you give to, a young person starting their career right now, in sales or even outside of sales?
Yeah, I would say on the sales front, salespeople, like a young salesperson, needs to truly think of themselves if you want to achieve some level of success, particularly in investment management, as being an extension of the investment team, right? So this notion of a salesperson, and then probably there's maybe a product specialist, and then there's the investment team. If I were a person starting out, I would want to be conversant across all 3 aspects of that. So learning the underlying philosophy behind your investment strategy and being able to articulate that in a thoughtful way to the folks that you engage with. This level just generates a certain level of trust with the folks that you might be talking to. The other thing, I know it's not redundant, is embracing technology.
Yep.
I think if a young person coming out today is probably in the best position to adapt to change. I've been doing this for 22 years. I'm not old in the business by any stretch of the imagination, but it's a little harder for me to adapt to change. A young person should be leading change and really adapting technology and coming up with fresh ideas. In truth, like I talked a lot of AI tools. I didn't come up with these AI tools. They weren't my ideas. There were young people that work at Versor that were thoughtful, innovative, and really engrossed in technology that introduced these tools to our firm. And somebody took it upon themselves to, hey, say this is an A+ project. I think it's going to make a strategic difference to the firm, and introduce it. So I would follow on that in that regard. The other thing I would say is people sometimes overemphasize the importance of relationships, particularly as it relates to sales. I think it's important. I would encourage young people to develop strong relationships, engage with somebody you think is a mentor, but follow a systematic process as it relates to that. So just, it's not enough to say, hey, I have this relationship with XYZ person, but I think it's important to think about how you engage that person in a systematic way, in a thoughtful way.
Do you all have a mentorship program?
We do. So the mentorship program is driven by the kind of the partner group. So we have the group of partners, works with a team of folks. In theory, if we're doing it correctly, that partner should serve as a mentor to the entirety of the firm.
I love it. Something you mentioned there, I want to just dive into a little bit more. So you mentioned, it was the young people who brought these AI as tools to light, but credit to yourself as well for, the willingness to adopt them, right? It's not always that leadership is willing to make changes, particularly when they are hearing them from, someone who maybe is a novice in the industry. The next question we like to talk about on here is, advice for young people, but what advice do you have for other leaders? And, maybe just on that note, you could elaborate a little bit more on.
So I've been working, Deepak Gurnani is the founder partner, the managing partner for Versor. And Deepak's been in the business over 30 years. I would give him credit in that he has always been one that embraces change. So my point around leadership, it really starts from the top. So if you have any resistance to change, particularly as it relates to new technology at the top, then it won't become part of the institutional infrastructure of the firm or institutional fabric of the firm. It's important for the leadership structure to innately believe that certain tools will add value. There needs to be buy-in from the top. To the extent the buy-in from the top doesn't occur, then it's going to be challenging. My advice to my peers in the space is really embrace the innovation that is coming from perhaps the younger generation, the folks a little bit younger than us, and the way that they think about problem solving is quite different. When I was coming out in career, I literally had a pager in the late 90s, early 2000s, where somebody would, if one of a managing directors trying to reach me, they'll page me and I'll find a payphone or call them back. The world has moved light years from that, right? And it will continue to move light years from that. And I find that folks that are resistant to embracing that change and complaining about how things used to be, probably won't get it.
Yeah, I think that, to the point on the CRM too, right? Yeah. Salesforce.com didn't exist in
exactly
the early 90s, late 90s.
I still know people who said they use Excel. I was like, what are you doing with Excel?
I know. It's crazy.
It's absurd. I know.
Yeah, we have a couple of people on our team that still use Salesforce Classic, like the old Salesforce, not the new one. And we give them all a hard time, but at least it's going in Salesforce. That's all we can ask for.
Yeah, they're doing the right thing. Yeah.
Cool. The last question we like to sort of end up on here is, what challenges, are you facing from a leadership perspective across the industry? Obviously, there's a ton going on. You hear so much about, the fundraising environment, this, or retail is hard to tap into that. What challenges are you facing, and how are you going about attacking them?
The challenges that this industry faces, everybody always mentions is how hard it is to raise capital. And that's always going to be the case. It's never been easy. If it was easy, then we wouldn't be having this podcast.
Yeah. Feels easy. We'd be on our yachts and
doing all types of stuff. I would say the biggest challenge that the industry is facing right now is going to be this confluence of, again, we're going through a technology revolution at this moment. And the use of, I'm saying it one more time, the use of AI tools, particularly as it relates to large language models and, kind of the bots that you can build on top of that, is transforming and will continue to transform every aspect of our lives, including how we engage in the investment management business, how we generate returns, and how we capture assets or partner with our clients. That's going to be a huge challenge. And I suspect the winners and losers in this base, in this business, will be the ones that can adapt quickest to that change, or going to be the firms that don't have any institutional biases that will prohibit them from embracing some of these tools. How do we try to adjust to that? We try to be nimble. So we do have a small, lean team. That nimbleness doesn't just start at the underlying team level or sub-team level, but the nimbleness really is at the top, where you asked the question, kind of how do we think about embracing some of the tools I mentioned. That really started with the founder, with the managing partner, Deepak Gurnani, who has always been a big proponent of change and a big proponent of using tools that can help us adapt to change more quickly. That's what we're trying to do. Now, how it ultimately ends up, we'll see, but we think we have a fighting chance, at least at this point.
I love it. AI technology, this revolution that we're having, really can be overwhelming. Any other closing comments just for the audience of salespeople listening in?
Yeah, I would say we started a conversation talking about athletics, and we spent a lot of time talking about AI. I would say in technology, one recommendation I would make is use tools, and we mentioned kind of recording and transcripts and Salesforce and other data management tools, to not only remember what you might have said and engage and how you engage with clients, but use those tools to analyze any missteps or mistakes that you made and figure out ways in which you can use these tools and learn from those mistakes in the same way that, maybe a basketball player is watching the film on the next day, learn from his mistakes.
Yeah. Well, I love it. DeWayne, thanks for coming in. This was a lot of fun. Anyone listening in who isn't already leveraging technology and AI for their sales and distribution efforts, no doubt now is definitely going to be looking into it a little bit more. So it's been great having you in the studio today. Can't thank you enough for coming by.
Thank you.
You can find this episode and others on Spotify, Apple, or your favorite podcast platform. We are also available on YouTube if you prefer to watch while you listen. If you would like to check up on past episodes, check out our website, dakota.com. Finally, if you like what you're hearing and seeing, please be sure to like, follow, and share these episodes. We welcome all your feedback as well. Thank you for investing your time with Dakota. The information contained herein is provided for informational and discussion purposes only, and is not and may not be relied on in any manner as legal, tax, or investment advice. This document does not constitute an offer to sell or the solicitation of an offer to buy any securities or the solicitation to enter into any investment advisory or similar agreement with Versor Investments LP or any of its affiliates, collectively Versor Investments, and may not be used or relied upon in connection with any offer or sale of securities. Any such offer may only be made by means of formal offering documents, the terms of which will govern in all respects. Past performance is not indicative of future results. The information set forth herein does not purport to be complete. Investing in an investment product made available by Versor Investments or its affiliates, a fund, involves a high degree of risk. No person has been authorized to make any statement concerning the fund other than as set forth in such funds offering documents, and any such statements, if made, may not be relied upon. Prior to investing, investors must familiarize themselves with the fund's offering materials and subscriptions documents, collectively the offering documents, and be prepared to absorb the risk associated with any such investment, including a total loss of all invested capital. The complete terms regarding an investment in a fund, including but not limited to the investment program, fees and charges, tax considerations, risk factors, conflicts of interest, and liquidity, are set forth in the fund's offering documents. The information contained herein is unaudited and provided as an accommodation to investors in connection with the monitoring of their investment in a fund. The material provided are based upon information including in our records, as well as information received from third parties. We do not represent that such information is accurate or complete, and it should not be relied upon as such. The financial information contained herein does not provide a complete picture of the fund's financial position or results, in part because it does not reflect all applicable fees, expenses, and other costs that will affect the fund's net returns. The actual returns of the fund will be lower and likely much lower than the unaudited returns included in this presentation. Please contact Versor Investments for a pro forma calculation of the impact of projected fees and expenses on the returns included herein. In the event of any discrepancy between the information contained herein and the information contained in an investor's audited account statements, the latter shall govern. Certain information in this document may consist of compilations of publicly available data. Versor Investments have obtained such data from what it believes to be reliable sources. However, Versor Investments have no ability and has not attempted independently to verify any of such information. Versor Investments has not generated or independently verified the data included in this document and assumes no responsibility for it. Certain information included in this document regarding Versor Investments' implementation of different strategies is simulated and backtested. These are hypothetical records only. These results have been generated by applying Versor Investments systems to historical pricing data for the publicly traded instruments, including securities and futures in which Versor Investments accounts will trade. The recipient should understand that Versor Investments, in using its analytics to generate simulated results, necessarily applies Versor Investments' statistical models to historical data on a back-tested basis. Different quantitative analysis will differ as to how statistically to define the different factors. While Versor Investments believe that its method of analysis is reasonable, there are other equally reasonable methods which would generate materially different results. Relying on any form of statistical quantitative analysis in investment decision-making is speculative and involves a high degree of risk. Past performance is not necessarily indicative of future results. Commodity interest trading involves substantial risk of loss. Because these results are simulated, they are subject to all of the material inherent limitations of back-tested data. Due to these limitations, among others, the U.S. Commodity Futures Trading Commission requires that the following disclaimer accompany such information. These results are based on simulated and hypothetical performance results that have certain inherent limitations. Unlike the results shown in an actual performance record, these results do not represent actual trading. Also, because these trades may have not actually been executed, these results may have under or overcompensated for the impact, if any, of certain market factors, such as lack of liquidity. Simulated or hypothetical trading programs in general are also subject to the fact that they are designed with the benefit of hindsight. Specifically, Versor Investments continuously seeks to enhance its methodologies, and therefore a survivorship bias is present as these hypothetical performances results are continuously updated to apply what Versor Investments believes to be the most optimal approach at that point in time. No representation is being made that any account will or is likely to achieve profits or losses similar to these being shown. An investment with Versor Investments is speculative and involves substantial risk. Investors may lose their entire investment. No one should rely on any simulated performance in determining whether to invest with Versor Investments. Certain analysis or statements included herein may constitute forward-looking statements. The forward-looking statements are not historical facts, but reflect Versor Investments' current statistical conclusions regarding future results or events. These forward-looking statements are subject to a number of risks and uncertainties that could cause actual results or events to differ materially from history or current expectations. Although Versor Investments believes that the assumptions inherent in the forward-looking statements are reasonable, forward-looking statements are not guarantees of future results or events, and accordingly, readers are cautioned not to place undue reliance on such statements due to the inherent uncertainty therein. This document is confidential and is intended solely for the addressee. The information contained herein is proprietary and confidential to Versor Investments and may not be disclosed to third parties or duplicated or used for any purpose other than the purpose for which it has been provided. Unauthorized reproduction or the distribution of this document or any excerpts hereof is strictly prohibited. The recipient agrees to dispose of this document promptly upon the request of Versor Investments.
Hey, thanks so much for joining Rainmaker Podcast. Hope you enjoyed the show, enjoyed the interview. I know I loved it. And hey, if you wake up in the morning and you raise money for an investment firm, you do cold outreach, whether you're a sales leader or salesperson, and you don't know about Dakota Marketplace, we would love to show it to you. It's world-class. It's used by over 880 investment firms and over 3,600 individual salespeople. To learn more, go to dakota.com and click on a free trial.